Then a conversation with a courageous young woman who really has led the national detransition movement. Her name is Prisha Mosley, still fighting to hold the medical professionals accountable who convinced her, starting when she was just 17 years old, that she was in fact, in the wrong body. And that's when she began her chemical and surgical transition. She is fighting in North Carolina now the statute of limitations. You may recall there was a pretty significant decision in North Carolina in the middle of 2025 that said we're going to extend the statute of limitations specifically because a lot of these young people undergoing these pretty dramatic surgeries, mutilating their bodies when they're still juveniles, then they get, 5, 7, 10 years down the road and go, "What did I do to myself?" And they wanna be able to hold those medical professionals accountable. So she's appealed that case. There were arguments that took place in court this week on that. So a very interesting conversation with Prisha, who is so courageous to share her very personal story and what she has been through, what she's still going through, and why she's kept up this fight all these years despite what it has cost her, in her own life. Now, a woman is waiting to find out if a North Carolina appeals court is going to let her case proceed as she seeks to reinstate medical malpractice claims that could really dramatically change accountability standards in gender medicine. She is independent women ambassador and detransitioner Prisha Mosley. She's 28 now. She sued her healthcare providers initially back in 2023. These medical providers and therapists started encouraging her gender transition when she was just 17 years old. Um, Her case ended up getting dismissed on a procedural basis because North Carolina had a statute of limitations that expired. Well, things have changed now in North Carolina. So she's got this appeal going, hoping that in fact she can reinstate those medical malpractice claims. Obviously, born a female, was making the transition to be a male, regretted it almost immediately, and has really, lifelong physical and mental injuries as a result of that. So I want to share part of my conversation that I had with her. I find her to be most inspiring and so courageous because I can't imagine discussing something more personal and more vulnerable than what this woman has been through, and going back to when she was a child, and had suffered her own trauma that kind of set her on this course.
So I had difficulty, trauma, and sexual trauma going on when I was a child. I was sexually assaulted and became pregnant when I was 14 and miscarried. And this happened right after I started my period, which, made me connect the whole thing to like being a woman. So when I was online on Tumblr in specific, and trans identifying adults started telling me that my suffering was because I was trans and that this stuff wouldn't happen to me if I was a boy, and that's what I just needed to do. I believed them. I felt validated and not alone instead of telling me that my, like, desire to hurt myself or change myself or be someone else was, not healthy. I was told that I was, in fact, not crazy and that how I felt made sense and that I just needed these drugs and surgery. And when I brought this to my doctors, they essentially said the same thing as the online activists. They didn't give me any pushback or anything. And it was strange because I was already being treated for an eating disorder, anorexia. And they did not tell me that my body was fat and that I really needed to starve myself to be okay. But when I said that I really needed to have a boy body because I was born wrong, they agreed with me.
So she shared with me that after posting videos of her transition after some of these surgeries, including the removal of her breasts, some folks that were kind of pushing back on this gender ideology um, reached out to her, and she partnered up with a group called Partners for Ethical Care. And she started learning that there were others just like her. She wasn't losing her mind. She was fully regretting what she had gone through. and, the mutilation of her body in the name of gender affirming care. And so she has decided to be very public. She was the first of the detransition lawsuits filed. Many others have since joined, and some have been settled. Even more recently, there was a case out of New York, a $2 million verdict for a girl who also underwent a double mastectomy at the age of 16. And her mother ended up testifying in that case, saying, I signed off on this for my daughter. Of course, I fully regret it, but I was told by counselors that she was talking with, that she was trapped in the wrong body. And if I didn't allow her to go on and have these, procedures, she was likely to kill herself. So imagine that dilemma for a parent to go through. And that's some of, what's been happening as these court cases play out. But that ruling in that New York case recently, which was earlier this year, January 30th, is likely to play into many of these other detransitioner medical malpractice lawsuits that are moving forward. Here's another segment of my conversation with Prisha Mosley, talking about the journey that she has been on and it really taking a toll, but being worth the fight.
It's advertisements because they're selling a lie and a scam. I thought that I was having the magical surgery that turned my girl chest into a boy chest because that's what was sold to me. But then I went on to have these very female complications when I gave birth, which also only a female can do. And it's all just a lie. That's why I originally had a merit for fraud, because I didn't turn into a boy. But they're like selling things. They don't tell you that you're getting like a double mastectomy and possibly leaving in breast tissues and grafting your nipples and taking everything apart. They don't tell you that. They say we're going to make you a boy. Any doctor, adult, activist who promises to have a quick and magical cure to suffering is selling a scam. There is no magical, easy way to go through puberty or your parents' divorce or other children bullying you or disliking your body. There's no magical cure for that. Every adult who is lying to you and trying to sell you a cure out of these feelings through drugs and surgery got to grow up and experience them and get past them. It's part of growing up and becoming an adult to face these trials and become a whole person. And by stopping those things with chemicals and surgery, they're ultimately taking something away from you that they got to have themselves while making profit. And it's not fair. You deserve better than that.
If she ends up being ultimately successful in this appeal, and again, the appeals court in North Carolina heard those arguments on Monday, but no ruling as yet. If she is successful, this could really set a national precedent in the case, um, you know, making it so that detransitioners like her aren't barred from seeking justice simply because it took some time to fully grasp, their injuries and the extent of the side effects from the chemical and surgical procedures. And it's going to be fascinating to watch this move forward. And in fact, these folks are really buoyed, as I mentioned, by that New York case. So um, watch for updates on that for certain.